Hello everyone. As you know, if you read my blog, I'm involved with a group of brewers who are going to be making a Russian Imperial Stout. The difference is we're all going to be putting it in a spent bourbon barrel. This is my personal contribution to it. I'm going to make 5 gallons of beer here today, and this is how I do it. There's lots of different ways to do it, but I thought you might want to see it. First things first, I got this aluminum pot here, and I've got it on my stove, and I just put 3 gallons of water in that pot, and I'm going to bring this up to a certain temperature, and you'll see why in a minute. Okay, here are some of the ingredients for what we're going to make today. And the nice thing about going to the home brewery in Ozark is that they will do all this for you and put it in a nice little bag, nice and compact. You give them the recipe and they'll mix it. So for instance, these grains right here, this is a mixture of some malts and a little bit of barley. We're making a Russian Imperial Stout. This is going to be steeped at that certain temperature I told you about just a second ago, between about 150 and 180 degrees. What we're trying to do is extract color and a little bit of flavor from these, this combination really of malts and a little bit of barley. Crystal malt, special bee malt, chocolate malt, there's all kinds of different varieties. It's all mixed in a nice little bag for you, and that's going to go in again actually into these bags, 3 of them, and my brewing friend Brett recommended to increase the surface area. Really, you just don't want to waste that stuff. You want to get every ounce of goodness out of that. This is almost like putting a tea bag in your brew, essentially. Then you have the fermentables. These are both dark and also light extract. This is malt extract. This is what the yeast will actually eat for dinner and convert to alcohol. And your alcohol content is roughly a function of how many pounds of this you put in your beer. And we're making 5 gallons here. Then you have your hops, flavoring and aroma, put in at different times. Then this is some priming sugar. This is actually a little bit of extra food for the yeast in this particular case. And then you have the yeast itself, which will wake up a little bit by putting it in some warm, lukewarm water and get these guys alive before we actually pitch the yeast, as they say, into the brew. And of course, this is the pot again, and the water has been set not to boil, but to get it up to about 150 degrees, and I'll show you the next step in a minute. Alright, so I took those malts and that barley and I put them into 3 cheesecloth bags, making sure I leave enough here to dangle this into the 150 degree plus water. Usually I hang it from a spoon, and I just scooped it out of the bag and used a container here to hold the cheesecloth while I dumped it in there. Alright, so there's the 3 tea bags, if you will, sitting in water. I let get up to about 165, almost 170, and they're just going to sit in that kind of cruise in that temperature. I turned the burner off, so they're just kind of absorbing all the goodness of what was in those 3 bags. I will pull those out after about 15 or 20 minutes of sitting in there, and when I do pull them out, I'll make sure I just kind of squeeze them like you would a tea bag to get every ounce of goodness into the liquid there. That's about 3 gallons of water. Ultimately, we're making 5 gallons of beer, but I will actually boil the wort, as it's called, in this same 3 gallons, and that's when I add the extract that I talked about earlier. And that'll take about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on what recipe you follow. Here's an example of what I'm trying to extract. Look at this juice that comes out of here. See, look at that stuff. That's pretty good. You don't want to waste any of that. You want to squeeze all of that out of there. Look at that. Texas tea. Hi. And that's my son saying hi. Alright, there's the Texas tea. All the bags are out, and now I got the flame back on, and we're going to bring this up to a boil. Alright, that malt extract has been dissolved into this. We're developing wort, and it's nice and creamy looking. This is going to hit a boil point here in a minute, a break point where this is really going to want to foam over. Once we get past that point, we'll be free to add hops and other things to this in about a 45-minute boil. Alright, so the wort boiled, and now I'm trying to cool it down to yeast pitching temperature, which in this case is below 80 degrees. I want to do that as quick as possible because I do not want to leave this very nutrient-rich environment at growth temperature for any weird thing that might have gotten in there any longer than possible. And I've got my own homegrown way of doing this because volume flow around a pot is the best way to cool it. So I've got a rubber band around my stopper right there, and just kind of makes the water circulate around this pot. And then I stir it once in a while to keep the fluid inside circulating. And I could probably get this cool in about 40 minutes, which is not too bad. Alright, here's a cooled off wort. Take a look at that real quick. That's below 80 degrees. So that's 3 gallons plus a little bit of loss. I use all this sanitized equipment like that to fill this 6.5 gallon carboy with 2 more gallons. That makes 5. Again, all this is sanitized with a special solution, including that funnel, the inside of this that I used to fill it with. There you go. And of course, this was boiling, so everything inside there technically is sanitized. And I would take its temperature once in a while with this thermometer and make sure that I always dunked it in sanitizing solution before I did that. The last ingredient, and what I'm going to do now, is dump what's in there, and I can't videotape that because I need 2 hands and then some to lift that and put that in there. But the last thing I'll do is in here, this is a sanitized area. That is little yeasty guys that are getting a nice little food sampling, a little buffet, a little appetizer before the main feast. Kind of loosening them up a little bit, and when you open that, that smells exactly like bread because it is yeast cells, which is what, of course, gives bread its fluffiness and air pockets. So I'm going to add that last. Pitching the yeast is what that is called. So there it is. I put it in there. You want a lot of air in there because yeast needs some oxygen initially to develop. And there's the yeast that I'm going to pitch in there. So we just pour that into there, like that. And they are going to munch down on the biggest dinner of their life, right there. And then when I'm done with that, I'll take that funnel out. I'll give that a swirl, a couple of swirls, just to make sure that all gets mixed up and we get more air in there. And then I will put a sanitized valve on there, basically. I'll show you that in a second. Oh, that's right. My fellow brewers will kill me if I don't take a gravity reading on this thing. The gravity reading is just measuring the density of the fluid here because you want to make sure that you know what that is, first of all, so that you know you've done the recipe right. And then also so that you know there's a finishing gravity that goes with this, and when you achieve that, you know that your yeasts are pretty much done eating. This one's coming in at about 1.08, and I really, to make a proper measurement, need to let go of the camera and hold this so it floats. It looks like it's about 1.085, which is pretty close to recipe.